Chapter 2. From Bristol to Weston. Meanwhile, Lady Helen and Alison had reached the A369 Markham Road. By coincidence, or perhaps a shared instinct honed by stress and caffeine, they both ended up at the same bus stop. A number 505 bus pulled up just as they arrived. "Just get on, my lady," Alison urged. "We'll meet Chip and Pin by the SS Great Britain in Bristol at 2. If they don't make it," she shrugged, "we head for Scotland on our own." "Sounds like a plan," said Lady Helen, stepping aboard. "Trouble follows those two like a dog after a bone anyway." They took seats at the back, where they could keep an eye on the rear window for pursuit or familiar faces. As the bus rumbled away from the curb, they spotted two flustered figures legging it down the road in pursuit. Lady Helen leaned back, smirking. "They'll catch the next one, probably." Chip and Pin paused, breathless and clearly out of shape. "You know, Pin, this whole mess is on you," Chip panted, hands on his knees. "We should have just stayed in the toilets, hovered over a urinal for an hour, then strolled out like we hadn't just broken a sweat. No running, no drama." Pin gave him a skeptical look. "Chip, have you ever actually seen anything? Hovering over a urinal for an hour? We'd have been the talk of the cleaning staff, and not the look at these two nice blokes kind of talk. More like, call security and arrest these weirdos before they start dealing drugs or worse. It's called cottaging, you know. Public toilets as pickup spots. We'd have been booked for anonymous sex in a public lavatory before we'd even finished reading the graffiti." Chip blinked in stunned silence. "Didn't think of it like that," he muttered. "So, how do we get to Bristol?" Pin rubbed his chin, contemplating. "We could wait for a bus, but that'll take forever. We could walk, but that's hours of misery. Or, we could hitch a lift. Downside, it means standing. And I'm really not in the mood for standing right now." They both stuck out their thumbs. A few minutes passed before a car slowed and stopped about 100 yards ahead. The driver gave a quick beep, and Chip and Pin hustled over. The passenger window rolled down to reveal an elderly woman, probably in her 80s. She smiled sympathetically. "I saw you two back there and thought you might want a lift. But I live just around the corner." And with that, she rolled up the window and drove off. "Je suis crisp," Chip groaned, wiping his brow. "That's the second time I've sprinted today. At this rate, I'll be beating Linford Christie's 100-meter dash." Pin shot him a look. "Don't kid yourself. You were at least 50 yards behind me when I reached the car." They trudged forward, both still wheezing. Chip had long given up smoking, but still liked a beer or 6. Pin had cut back on the booze since things with Lady Helen had gotten serious, so he was a bit lighter on his feet, but still nowhere near athletic. Another truck passed, slowed down, and then pulled up next to them. "Need a lift to Bristol?" the driver called. They nodded eagerly. "Hop in then," he said. The truck's interior was covered in flour. Chip eyed the driver warily. "I can give you a lift, if you don't mind the flour," the man added, seemingly unaware of the ridiculous state of his cabin. "No problem," Chip replied, exchanging a wary glance with Pin. They climbed in. The truck lurched forward. After a few moments of awkward silence, the older driver turned toward them. "So, you lads looking for a good time?" Chip froze. Then, recovering quickly, "Yeah, once we get to Bristol, we'll meet our girlfriends. Drinks, dancing, painting the town red." He shot Pin a glance. Without missing a beat, Pin added, "Yeah, like Fred Wedlock, the oldest swingers in town." He chuckled, clearly proud of his pop culture reference. The driver looked confused. "I've no idea what you're on about. Just no funny business, all right? I'm just trying to get you to Bristol." Chip quickly nodded. "No funny business, just two blokes out for a good time. Ha, ha." The ride continued in an awkward silence, tension hanging in the air like an unpaid bill. Eventually, the truck slowed to a stop. "Bread factory in Abbotsleigh," the driver said, almost relieved. "This is it." Chip's jaw dropped. "That's it. We've barely moved. We could have walked this faster." They got out of the cab and wandered back to the main road, thumbs at the ready. "Third time's the charm," Pin said hopefully. Eventually, another truck rolled up. The driver stuck his head out. "Going to Bristol?" They nodded like two bobbleheads in a hurricane. "Hop in." The ride began again. Chip leaned back in his seat, eyes ahead. Suddenly, he felt something, a gentle brushing sensation on the back of his neck. He whipped around. "Pin, knock it off!" Pin raised both hands. "I'm not doing anything." Chip turned his head to the side, and then as far around as he could. He looked bewildered, then caught sight of it. An orangutan, sitting behind him. Its hairy arm reached over the seat, gently massaging the back of Chip's neck. Chip shot upright, eyes wide in shock. "What the Gregory Peck?" "Don't worry about Adge," the driver said, unfazed. "He's an escapee from Bristol Zoo. Broke out last night, overpowered 2 guards and nicked the van. Apparently he'd been on so many school trips before that he figured out how to drive. Clever little burglar, right?" Chip blinked at the orangutan now sitting calmly behind him. The primate raised a hairy arm, offering Chip a joint like a seasoned festival veteran. "What is that smell?" Pin asked, wrinkling his nose. "It smells illegal." "Oh, that!" The driver sounded far too casual. "Adge and me shared a spliff earlier. He calmed down after the third one, but now, well, the farting's become a bit much." Chip tried to breathe shallowly, fighting back a wave of nausea and inappropriate laughter. The air in the cabin was thick with smoke and primal stink. "No thanks, Adge," Chip muttered, waving away the joint. "I've given up." Pin leaned forward, eyebrow raised. "Just drop us at Bedminster Bridge if you don't mind. We'll walk from there. No offence, but fresh air's starting to sound like a luxury." The driver nodded and pulled over. "All right, lads. Good luck." They scrambled out of the truck like rats off a sinking ship. As they walked away, Pin smirked. "Well, mate, you definitely smell worse than I do now, and that's saying something." Chip grimaced. "I know. I can feel it clinging to me, but let's just get to the quay and find the girls." They pressed on through the city streets, dodging barking dogs and curious stares. Pin, ever the comedian, whispered, "Maybe the dogs have been to Bristol Zoo too," after the third one snarled in Chip's direction. After what seemed like a long time, they finally reached the SS Great Britain. Chip exhaled in relief. Finally, now all we have to do is to find Alison and my lady. As they waited, Chip became painfully aware of the lingering scent clinging to him, a unique cocktail of weed, orangutan, flour, and unwashed upholstery. It was going to be a long wait. Alison was in high spirits. "If we get to Bristol Quay early, how about a meal, a glass of girly wine, and a wander around the wharf?" "Good idea, Alison," Lady Helen agreed. "We should spend some time together. Sometimes I feel tethered to Pin. I think Chip feels the same way about you." Alison grinned. "I know what you mean. Sometimes I keep Chip on a leash and say, 'Down, boy,' before getting him to do some tricks." "There's a statement you can take 2 ways, Lady Helen laughed. Alison raised an eyebrow, mock-offended. "Lady Helen, how dare you suggest such things? That side of things never entered my mind." The two collapsed into laughter. After a moment, Lady Helen changed tack. "They say Bristol was heavily bombed during the war. Big port, lots of trade and shipping, that sort of thing. It's still got that up-and-coming feel. Parts of the quay are underdeveloped, apparently. That's what Pin told me anyway. So the evidence is that the scenic views might be, shall I say, mixed." Alison nodded thoughtfully. "Bristol. Chip always says that Bristol had a rubbish football team. Or was it 2 rubbish teams?" Didn't matter. He'd go on about how a city the size of Bristol should have a proper top-flight team. I never understood why he bothered. Exeter City aren't exactly title contenders. Lady Helen paused, then added with a shrug. "I don't know much about football. In Scotland, we don't play cricket, and there's only one football team, depending on which religion you were born into. Protestants support Celtic and Catholics support Rangers, or was it the other way around?" Alison blinked. "Lady Helen, I hate to break it to you, but you've got that backwards. Celtic are Catholic, Rangers are Protestant. It's all very tribal." They let that sit for a beat. Then Alison perked up again. "I reckon Bristol's got decent nightlife, though. Exeter doesn't offer much. But Bristol's got Colston Hall. Loads of big bands and acts go there. The Hippodrome, too. It's been around forever. The seats launch you into orbit, but the shows are decent. Not quite West End, but not bad either. You wouldn't get that in Exeter." Before Lady Helen could respond, a man with a filthy raincoat and a bottle of cider plopped down in front of them, smiled, and gave them an almost toothless grin. "You ladies going to Bristol?" the man slurred, slumping onto the bench beside them in a cloud of cider fumes. "That's what it says on the bus." Allison replied flatly, giving him a look that said, "Mind your own business, pal." "I was just askin'," he muttered, taking a hearty swig from a battered bottle. "You two look real good-looking. Never had a girlfriend, you know." He gargled down the liquid as if it were holy water. "This here's the real stuff. Somerset's finest rat poison. None of that Taunton cider or Blackthorn nonsense. This'll rot your gut, but I've been drinking it since I was 8. Done me no harm." He grinned, two teeth clinging on like survivors on an upturned boat on the Atlantic. Allison leaned toward Lady Helen. "Let's go," she whispered, already standing. As they turned to leave, she offered a smirk. "That's a great chat-up line, sir. Keep it up." "You know what my problem is?" he shouted after them. "I can't keep it up." The two women burst into laughter as they stepped off the bus. "I tell you, my lady," Allison said, still chuckling, "he makes Chip smell like a bottle of Chanel No. 5. They continued, unsure of their bearings, but clearly somewhere in Bristol. They wandered along Hotwell Road until the SS Great Britain came into view, rising beside the wharf like a rusted titan from a forgotten age. Crossing a small bridge, they noticed a sign, Spike Island. It looked disappointingly like every other street in Bristol. Soon they reached the ship. Allison stopped by the information board. "Oh, look, my lady. The SS Great Britain is a passenger steamship built by Isambard Kingdom Brunel, largest in the world from 1845 to 1853. First iron steamer to cross the Atlantic. Took 14 days. They dragged it back from the Falklands in 1970, a complete wreck. Now it's a museum. For a price, of course." Lady Helen sighed. "Not today. I just want food, a drink, and a seat that doesn't smell of cider and broken dreams." They found a cozy little Italian place nearby, with views across the water to the SS Great Britain. Warm lighting, red-checkered tablecloths, and just enough wine to soften the edges of a mad day. They lingered for over an hour, enjoying pasta, gossip, and the rare peace of being just two women, unaccompanied by idiots. Allison, swirling the last of her wine, noticed two familiar figures approaching the boat. "Look," she said, "the Muppets have landed." Lady Helen turned. "Oh dear. I was hoping for at least another half hour of uninterrupted sanity." "I've actually really enjoyed this," Allison smiled. "Proper conversation, no interruptions, no rescuing anyone from their own stupidity." Lady Helen nodded. "We must do it again." As Allison paid the bill, the two women rose and headed toward the bridge. "Let's surprise them," Allison suggested. "Take the scenic route." Lady Helen grinned. "Cumberland Road, then cut across by the ferry?" "Exactly." They looped behind the buildings, passed along Gas Ferry Road, and turned toward the quay. That's when they spotted them. Pin chuckling as Chip, arms outstretched like a circus performer, tiptoed along the wall with his eyes shut. Allison's heart jumped. "Chip!" At the sound of her voice, Chip's foot slipped, and down he went, straight into the cold, unforgiving water. Pin sprang into action, hurling a buoy at him. A ship worker joined in, tossing a rope. Between them, they hauled a shivering, drenched Chip back onto dry land. "Je suis crisp," Chip sputtered through chattering teeth. "That was freezing. Why did you do that, Allison? I could have drowned." Allison threw her arms in the air as if to say, "What did I do?" A rescuer wrapped him in a blanket and handed over a bundle. "Bit out of season, but we've got some clean clothes we were going to bin. You can borrow a suit till you dry off." Chip was very grateful and accepted the offer. That was, until he saw what was described as a suit. Chip stared at the outfit. "I can't wear that. I'll look like a prat." No, Pin said quickly. "I saw a poster at the Hippodrome. Sir John Gielgud's in a play about Henry VIII. You'll look like you're in character. It's practically Shakespearean." "Can we just buy him some clothes?" Allison asked, eyebrow raised. "I'll explain later," Pin muttered. "Just get yourself dry, take off your wet clothes, and put them on, Chip. You'll freeze otherwise. After that, we'll swing by Candor and buy some more socially acceptable clobber after you are fully dressed as Henry VIII, or one of his courtiers." "What's wrong with the old clothes?" Allison asked, confused. "I'll tell you later," Pin said. "Put the suit on, Chip, and let's go before you freeze." Chip groaned, dragging the theatrical costume closer. "This better not be a codpiece." After changing into the Henry VIII suit, Chip descended the ship's ladder like a spaceman landing on the moon. He wobbled stiffly, his limbs robotic, and nodded solemnly at passers-by who gawked at his outfit. Embracing the absurdity, he gave them a regal wave, part Queen's Jubilee, part budget Renaissance fair. As he strutted through the streets like a monarch in exile, shoppers stopped and stared. The spectacle was undeniable. By the time they reached the Candor store, Chip was practically ready for a royal parade. Inside, they headed for the men's section. Chip found what he needed, and Pin paid for his new clothes. Allison, carrying his old shoes and garments like toxic waste, looked around. "Where's Chip?" "He's with Pin in the changing room," said Lady Helen, trying to sound casual. Allison put her bundles down and proceeded to the men's section, picking up clothes that she thought Chip should wear. She paid at the counter, turning to Lady Helen saying, "And where's Chip now?" Lady Helen pointed and said, "Over there." Allison narrowed her eyes and marched over. She yanked the curtain aside like a judge unmasking a criminal. "Put this on. I've paid for it, so you're wearing it." Chip, mid-disrobed, stood there sheepishly with Pin trying to wrestle Henry's top over his head. "Don't argue," Allison snapped. "Just do it. No questions asked." Realizing resistance was pointless, Chip obediently changed. When he emerged, Lady Helen beamed. "Wow, you look smart." "I've never seen you so tidy, Chip. I could almost fancy you," Pin added mockingly. "But you still stink. We'll get you to the cologne department this mall. You can stink pleasantly." "Yes, Chip," said Allison, pinching her nose. "You've scrubbed up well. But that smell, Bristol Wharf, is one thing. This is something else entirely." Pin pressed his palms together reverently. "Let us spray." He mimed holding a perfume bottle and pressing the cap like a priest blessing a sinner. They bought cologne and antiperspirant, then dragged Chip into an alleyway near Candor. There, they sprayed him up, down, and sideways. It was less a makeover, more a chemical delousing. Drenched in fragrance, Chip grumbled, "I smell like Liz Taylor's handbag." "Better than Percy Thrower's jockstrap," Pin replied, deadpan, "which is what we had to suffer before." Chip couldn't argue with that. He sulked in silence. Pin checked his watch. "Look, it's 3:30. We need to be leaving for Giordano by 4. Let's get a taxi and skedaddle." Lady Helen frowned. "Skedaddle? Leave. Rapidly. Preferably before Chip's aroma starts peeling paint." Pin and Chip were hungry and in a hurry. They found a phone box next to a bakery. Pin dialed for a cab, while Chip bought 2 large meat pasties. Each was stuffed with suspiciously large chunks of meat and more salt than in the Atlantic Ocean. They were hot, unhealthy, disgusting, and absolutely delicious. Chip was already halfway through his nasty pasty before Pin hung up the phone. 10 minutes. Not too bad," he said, relieved. "But it's clear skies. That means it'll get freezing cold soon." "We've got a 10-minute wait. We can survive that." They all agreed. 40 minutes later, the taxi arrived. Pin stormed over, livid. "Where the heavens have you been? It's freezing out here. Took another fare, did you?" The driver sighed. "No, sir, I didn't. But the person I picked up said they were going to the Mason's Arms on the way to the centre. I thought I'd help you out. Turns out, the Mason's Arms she meant was in Snuff Mills. I had to leave the city centre and come back." "So you're lucky I was only 40 minutes. You know what traffic's like at this time of day?" Chip had heard enough. He opened the rear door and gently guided Allison into the back. Pin and Lady Helen followed. "Where you were going, then?" the driver asked. "Giordano Services, please," Lady Helen replied. "Ah, well, that's out of Bristol. That means there's a surcharge." "What do you mean, a surcharge?" Pin asked, instantly suspicious. "Double rate. If I go on the motorway, I could get stuck for hours. Therefore, I have to charge extra." Allison folded her arms. "You don't have to take the motorway. You could use the A roads." Silence. Then the driver muttered, "Yeah, but I wouldn't get double time, would I?" Chip stepped in. "Oh well, perhaps we're paying twice as much for your speed, a bit like London cabs, the ones that are run by pirates." "That's it," said the driver, brightening. "I was doing this to help you, get there faster. See, we Bristolians are good people. We try to help." "Yourself," muttered Pin under his breath. Despite the tension, the M5 was clear, and they arrived at Giordano's in 25 minutes. Pin braced himself. "How much?" £20, the driver replied. "That's before a tip, mind." 20 quid? Pin squealed. "Chip, take off your shirt and give it to him, and I'll throw in Lady Helen as a bonus." Chip raised an eyebrow. Pin added, and if he throws in a receipt, he can sniff your cologne. Pin huffed, pacing in tight circles like a caffeinated squirrel. I tell you, Chip, that man's got criminal aspirations. I've seen mafia films with more honest pricing structures. Chip raised an eyebrow. You took a cab from a man with a van-style cab with no meter and a suspicious odor of pickled eggs. What did you expect? Royal etiquette and a wet wipe? I expected change, Pin barked, and maybe a receipt, some kind of moral ledger. Right, well, Chip replied, dusting himself off. Let's add it to the growing list of injustices. Alongside the disappearing Mercedes, the friendly orangutan, or my enforced swim at the wharf, all of which have been inexplicably linked to our time in Bristol. Alison appeared behind them, her arms folded, already regretting her life choices. Are you two quite finished? Pin pointed dramatically in the direction the cab had gone. That man's got 20 quid of Chip's money. He probably owns 3 properties in Weston by now. Probably owns all the hotel too, Alison muttered. Come on, before one of you challenges a lamppost to a duel. Chip gave a dramatic sigh. Why should all the calamities happen to him? Well, Pin, you've always had karma. One day that taxi driver will stub his big toe on a beach pebble and justice will be served on him. And I hope it's a sharp one, Pin growled. None of your smooth municipal pebbles. I want jagged Devon granite. Pin took a deep breath. Yes, okay, I'll calm down. Where was I? Ah, I remember now. Actually, I have no money on me. I left my wallet in the glove box of the Merc before it was stolen. I didn't have any money on me when you changed clothes after falling in the dock on Bristol Quay. When we pulled you out, you gave me your wallet to look after while you changed clothes, so it was your money I used to pay the taxi, Chip. Not mine. Oh, and stop telling me you've got no money when I opened your wallet. You had more notes than Beethoven. That made Chip livid. That little toe rag, that thieving mammal. My lady, let's get the car, and we'll get that taxi driver. That little thieving weasel. Calm down, Chip, said Pin sarcastically. It's funny how mature reflection changes to forensic anger when someone finds out it's their money that paid for the deception. Alison intervened. Forget it, Chip. Let's find the Merc and get on our way. We don't want to draw attention to ourselves any more than we need to. They walked a little way until Lady Helen flicked the key fob of the car. That triggered the lights of the Merc to shine on and off, showing exactly where the car was. They walked quickly to the Merc. Lady Helen put her key in the car lock, and they were in. In the darkness of the night, the car park lights, Lady Helen shouted, "Come on, boys and Alison, let's go to Foxtrot and Oscar." Lady Helen was at the wheel. Right, where are we going now? She inquired. Simple, said Chip. Let's get out of the services and head towards the M5 and carry on to Birmingham. That will take about 2 hours, and then we can find somewhere to stay, have some food and a drink. And do we need a drink after today's shenanigans? They all nodded in agreement as Lady Helen drove out of Gordano's and up the hill towards the roundabout and the M5. At the top, Chip said, "First left." Lady Helen was just about to turn left when Pin shouted, "No, straight on." Lady Helen swerved and drove straight on, then down the entrance lane to the M5 heading west. "No, my lady," shouted Pin. "I meant straight on right, not straight on, straight on. This takes us back on the M5 southwest, and now we are heading back to Exeter." "I missed the place so much," said Lady Helen sarcastically. "If you 2 blockheads would have given me the right directions, we wouldn't be going this way. So, what do we do now?" A frustrated Alison chirped as she proceeded to say, "If you ask me, and I know no one has, but it has been a bad day, and we have to stop somewhere, so I suggest we turn off at Weston-super-Mare. I know a small hotel there, and although a little on the trashy side, it's okay, overlooking the beach, and they make a great breakfast." "What about food for tonight?" asked Chip's stomach. "I'm starving," Chip agreed. "It's a seaside resort. I would put a bet on that there is a fish and chip shop close by." Chip thought out loud before saying, "Never thought about that. You're right. I think it's a great idea. There, we can get washed, brushed, and cleaned up. Then we can go out and paint the town scarlet, crimson, and ruby." "Let's stick to red," said Pin mournfully. "That means Chip's going to have an early night," deciphered Alison. He means his eyes are red and those little sandmen are scratching his eyes out. I'll let him have a pint with his fish and chips. Then he will be out for the count. Chip sat there and began enumerating in French. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What's Chip on about? Asked Lady Helen. I think he thinks a French count, was Pin's response. One too many letters, if you ask me, said Alison. And if he carries on, he'll be out for the count. Look, Lady Helen said as she was driving, wanting to know the plan. Are we stopping at Weston-super-Mare or not? I think so, my lady, said Chip. My stomach definitely agrees with that. Pin agreed, as did Alison. At last they had a plan. After today, that was a big deal. Lady Helen continued driving at a modest 60 miles an hour, so as not to be noticed by any enforcement agency, and since her destination was not too far away, that speed was fine. Well, maybe, or not. All of a sudden, blue lights were flashing behind the Merc. Lady Helen pulled over, and she wound down her windscreen. The officer approached with caution. Good evening, madam. Is this your car? Lady Helen thought about saying something sarcastic, but held her tongue. Yes, sir. It actually belongs to my husband, but I'm the driver. Here is my license. She handed over her driving license. The officer looked it over. Lady, is it? Yes, she said, of the Craigmere estate in Scotland, very close to Balmoral. Well, Lady Helen, who are the other 3 people in the car? Oh, Chip, Pin, and Alison. They've been staying with me on the estate. Now I'm taking them back to Exeter. The officer doffed his cap. Madam, someone with a Mercedes like this assaulted a man heading north today. Your car matches the one we're looking for, but you seem to be in the clear. He handed her the driving license back. Have a good journey back to Exeter. He returned to his car and appeared to complete his paperwork. Let's get out of here fast, stressed Pin, his voice tinged with anxiety. He now knew that the police were looking for a car like Lady Helen's heading north, and they were going north tomorrow. A palpable sense of fear emanated from him as he looked toward the others. Lady Helen continued driving at 60 miles an hour, quickly taking a left turn onto a side road at Junction 21, heading toward Weston-super-Mare. I don't know much about Weston, said Pin. It's got a beach where, when the tide goes out, you need Wellington boots just to get to the sea. Except it's not really the sea, it's the Bristol Channel. A sort of sewage outlet for Bristol and South Wales, plus the nuclear reactor effluent from Hinkley Point. It's not pretty. Chip, eager to steer the conversation in a more engaging direction, interjected. Of course, Weston-super-Mare does have a few famous folks, like John Cleese, a.k.a. Mr. Cheese, and Roald Dahl. Though I think Roald Dahl only went to school here, so he probably shouldn't count. I think newsreader Jill Dando came from here too, added Alison. Did you know John Cleese lived here with his parents? Chip continued. His father was called Mr. Cheese before changing it to Cleese. Is that why there are so many cheese jokes in Monty Python? Alison asked. Don't know, replied Chip. I never watched it. No TV in the early 70s, only Radio Luxembourg for me. They made a couple of films, didn't they? Lady Helen asked. Monty Python, confirmed Chip. Yes, but did you know that when Life of Brian was released, it was banned in Torquay? A few other local authorities banned it too, and they gave it an X certificate, meaning only people over 18 could see it. The distributors refused to show it with that certificate, which effectively made it banned in Torquay. So, not much of interest in Weston-super-Mare then, concluded Alison. Fish and chips excluded, added Chip. Pin then quickly hatched a plan. Let's get to our destination, my lady, or we'll have a car identification problem. We need to find another car model tomorrow. This one's going to get us into trouble. I suggest buying a cheap car, and then we can park yours at Bristol Airport. There are a few places where you can leave it in a field for a low price. Then we can buy another car from a local dealer, and I'll drive on from there. But how do I get my car back? Lady Helen asked. We'll be in Scotland for ages. Don't worry, my lady, said Chip. Pin has to return to get his half of Mrs. Treble's money. He can drive it back to Scotland in a few weeks. Yes, that's true, Pin added. Don't worry, my lady, we've got it all in hand. They parked by the beach and walked down a side road to a little bistro hotel that looked more like a hostel, with a clientele that seemed suspect. They exchanged cautious glances as they entered. Alison rang the bell. A man appeared at reception. "Oh, hello," Alison said. "Is Mrs. Brightside here? I've always dealt with her when I stay here." The man replied, "Madam, Mrs. Brightside hasn't owned this place in years. I now own it. How can I help?" "Oh, sorry. Do you have 2 rooms for the night?" "2 rooms," he asked, eyeing them. "Yes, 2 rooms, please." "Are you married?" Chip said yes, and Pin said no at the same time. "Is that a yes, we're not married, or a no, we are married?" "It's complicated," said Chip. "Married," Pin chimed in. "Does it make any difference?" asked Alison. "Not at all," the man said. "We take all types here as long as they pay." "Credit card?" asked Alison. "Cash," the owner replied abruptly. Pin opened Chip's wallet and paid. "Does that include breakfast?" Pin asked. "Breakfast?" The man laughed. "You wouldn't want the breakfast here. I don't even do it. I go around the corner to the Seaside Cafe." "Thanks, but we won't be having breakfast," Pin confirmed. "Welcome to Weston," the hotel owner said, handing them their keys. The air smelled faintly of damp as they shuffled along the creaky wooden floorboards toward the narrow staircase. As they walked to their rooms, Alison remarked, "Are you sure Cleese has left this godforsaken place?" "Don't mention the wardrobe," Chip muttered, fearing the worst about the rooms and the hotel owner. The staircase was steep and tight, with no handrails, leaving them to balance against the cold, uneven walls. The rooms were, to put it kindly, tight, barely enough space for a bed and a wash basin. The only window, small and streaked with grime, offered a view of a forgotten alleyway, lit by a flickering streetlight. Nails were hammered into the doors for clothes hanging, and a communal shower down the corridor looked like generations of weary travellers had used it. Chip could already feel the grime seeping into his clothes. He had no choice but to endure it. He had to clean up and change into his new clothes. Holding his nose, he braved the shower, which, though warm, trickled out in what could barely be called a stream. The water was a dull brown at first, but it eventually cleared up enough for him to scrub away the smell of the orangutan. After 20 minutes of wrestling with the communal bar of soap, he managed to clean himself. He dressed inside the cramped shower cubicle, having no room to maneuver anywhere else. When fully clothed, Chip opened the door and stepped out, gleaming and ready to go, despite the lingering smell of damp towels and cheap soap. But where were the others? None of them needed or wanted a shower. They'd all had one that morning. Tomorrow, they could find one at a motorway service station heading north. They were certainly not inclined to use the hotel shower at all. "Let's go see what fabulous food Weston has to offer," Chip said, eager for a meal, desperate to wash the discomfort of the room away. "I agree. Let's get going," said Alison. Pin and Lady Helen nodded in agreement. Lady Helen added, "I'm not sure we should be out too long. I don't feel safe." Her eyes darted around as though expecting someone to leap from behind a corner. They walked along the seafront, the cold wind whipping at their faces, until they came upon a small Albanian takeaway. "Don't see many Albanian takeaways in Exeter, do we?" Chip commented, pausing to look at the grimy window. "We've got Indian, Caribbean, Bangladeshi, Punjabi, Nepalese, and a bit of French and European cuisine, but no Albanian food outlets." "I used to think Albania was a prison," Alison said, her voice a little too light as she remembered some vague geography lesson from her past. Pin seized the opportunity to educate her. "Of course you did. Albania was a communist police state, not Alabama, Chip. Enver Hoxha, the Albanian leader, had thousands of his opponents executed and tens of thousands more imprisoned in forced labor camps. It was a horrible place, and probably still is. No one goes there on holiday, but one day it'll change. It'll probably join the EEC and become part of our European community. Hard to believe, but it will happen." "Okay," replied Chip. "I know where Alabama is, but I'm not sure where Albania is." Pin proceeded with a geography lesson. "Albania is squeezed between Yugoslavia and Greece. It has a population smaller than Birmingham, which is probably why you don't see many Albanian food outlets, as you call them, Chip." He turned to Alison. "Do you want to try an Albanian takeaway?" "Yes, why not?" said Alison. "I've never had Albanian food before." "They do a very nice pastike," Pin said, sounding knowledgeable, though secretly it was the only Albanian dish he'd ever heard of. That'll do for me, said Chip. A nice Albanian pasty. I expect it's got spices in it to make it taste, oriental. No, Chip, Pin corrected. It's pastike, made with eggs, milk, pasta, feta cheese, and olive oil, with a generous helping of salt and pepper. I'd still prefer a pasty, Chip grumbled. They sell Albanian beer, Alison said, trying to keep Chip interested. Look, birra Tirana. I'll buy you one if you stay and try the pastic. Okay, if you make it 2 birra Tiranas, Chip bargained, leaning against the counter with a grin. It's a deal, Alison agreed, tapping her purse. She raised an eyebrow, clearly considering whether it was worth the risk. Lady Helen piped up. I suppose you could say the pastic is not a pasty, but is a pastiche with all those ingredients. Another joke, my lady, Alison said. That's 2 today. Be careful, it catches up with you. Yeah, and when you're finished, you'll have a pass dish, Chip added, pleased with himself for what he thought was a brilliant punchline. The joke was over before your quip, Chip, Pin said. You should always quit while you are behind. Let me handle this, Chip said, stepping up to Alexander, who owned the takeaway. Can I have 4 pastiche, 2 birra Tiranas, and 3 colas? Diet, of course. The takeaway owner, Alexander, regarded Chip in the way only a hairy-moustached Albanian man could. A look that said, you'll get what I've got, and you'll like it. You could have my most favourite and recommended meal, my friend, he said, his accent thick. But we are out of pastic. No more milk until tomorrow, but we've got some pasties from the supermarket. We can microwave them for you. Makes them a little hot and greasy, but that's all we have. Chip looked around, confused. He nodded solemnly. Then we'll have 4 pasties, 2 birra Tiranas, and 3 diet colas, please. Alexander's face clouded. I am afraid we have no birra Tiranas. I must drive to Albania in a big white van to fetch them myself. Saves on taxes, you know. I'm going tomorrow. I can set 2 aside for you. Chip sighed, visibly deflated. We're leaving tomorrow, so just the pasties and 4 diet colas then, thanks. Alexander smiled in that maddening way only a man with a thick moustache and a superiority complex, honed behind a steamy takeaway counter, could manage. But the colas, they are warm, he said proudly. They sit atop the food reheater. They were very cheap to buy, so I sell them at a premium. If they were cold, I would have to charge more. I save you money, my friend. How about that? Chip stared at him, blankly, wordlessly. He handed over the cash and accepted the warm bag of hot pasties and tepid colas, like a man accepting his fate. Alison leaned in with a smirk. Why is it always you, Chip? Never mind, Chip muttered. At least we've got something to eat. Pasty, drink, then we hit a pub. After that, back to the hotel. Sleep. Forget this disaster of a day. Lady Helen hesitated. Her aristocratic instinct told her to retreat. She wanted nothing more than to slink back to the hotel and draw a bath. Not that there was one, but the others needed a drink, something strong to rinse the day from their mouths. They stumbled into a small, dimly lit pub around the corner. The air inside smelled of spilt ale and damp carpet. Pin, ever the gentleman, volunteered to fetch the first round. He returned moments later, setting the drinks down with a flourish, as if he'd just retrieved the Holy Grail. Right, he said, wiping his hands down his trousers. 1 gin and tonic and 1 beer for me. Chip, 1 gin and tonic and 1 beer for you. He turned to the ladies, expectant. Alison raised an eyebrow, then grabbed the gin and tonic intended for Chip and passed it to Lady Helen. She snatched the other for herself and took a swift, deliberate sip. Actually, she said, coolly, we'll have 1 double gin and tonic each. She turned to Chip, shaking her head as she downed another mouthful. If you boys want a double gin and tonic, go to the bar yourselves. Chip narrowed his eyes at Pin, who merely shrugged. They both knew the rules had changed. Pin cleared his throat and changed the subject. I've been thinking, we need to hide the Merc. Give it a few days, and the police will stop actively looking. Parking it near Bristol Airport should be fine. He leaned in slightly, voice low. But let's not drive straight to Scotland. No point charging ahead. We could take a scenic route. Head to Birmingham tomorrow, stop off in the Cotswolds, and check out Stratford-upon-Avon. Bit of history. See where Shakespeare wrote his plays. We need a break. Lady Helen dabbed her eyes with a tissue, the emotions of the past few days finally catching up with her. I'd like that, she said softly. A slower pace would help me. I'm just emotional, you know. Pin gave her a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Don't worry, Helen, we've got this. She knocked back her gin and tonic in one go. Alison followed suit, equally eager to put the day behind her. Chip and Pin gulped down their beers. Another round? Chip asked, a bit too brightly. No, Alison replied, a bit too firmly. We need to be up early and get on the road. No time for more drinks. Chip grumbled under his breath, but didn't argue. The group headed back to the hotel, the streets of Weston cold and unusually quiet. Outside the lobby, they were greeted by a scruffy young man in a hoodie. A crumpled envelope dangled from one hand. A limp spliff hung from his lips. You diggers want to share some stuff? He asked, voice slurred. It's cheap, man. Chip didn't miss a beat. Actually, I don't dig, he said, stone-faced. Sparrows go cheap, though. No thanks, mate. Just had a pasty. He followed it up with a loud, unapologetic burp. The dealer curled his lip in disgust and turned away, muttering something unintelligible as he disappeared into the night. That was a bit rude, Chip, Alison said, though she couldn't hide her grin. It worked, though, he replied with a smug shrug. Alison exhaled, shaking her head. 20 years ago, that vagrant might have been you. So, well done. You've come a long way. The words landed heavier than she'd intended. Chip's past, foster care, missed chances, bounced around by a system that never quite knew what to do with him, wasn't something he wore on his sleeve, but the others knew enough. And Alison, sensing the shift, softened her tone. Well done, Chip, she added gently. They stepped into the musty hotel lobby. The next day's plan hovered silently between them like mist. 8 a.m. in the lobby. Lady Helen said with a tired but determined smile. See you then. Right, Chip replied with a yawn. I'll be the first up. Won't be able to sleep, worried I'll oversleep. Uh-huh, Alison said, unconvinced. Sure. The group split off, heading to their separate rooms. Each closed door muffled a different thought, a different anxiety. But one thing was certain. They were still moving forward. One bizarre British town at a time. Yeah, and when you're finished, you'll have a pass dish. Chip added, pleased with himself for what he thought was a brilliant punchline. The joke was over before your quip, Chip, Pin said. You should always quit while you are behind. Let me handle this, Chip said, stepping up to Alexander, who owned the takeaway. Can I have 4 pastic, 2 birra tiranas, and 3 colas? Diet, of course. The takeaway owner, Alexander, regarded Chip in the way only a hairy-moustached Albanian man could. A look that said, you'll get what I've got, and you'll like it. You could have my most favourite and recommended meal, my friend, he said, his accent thick. But we are out of pastic. No more milk until tomorrow, but we've got some pasties from the supermarket. We can microwave them for you. Makes them a little hot and greasy, but that's all we have. Chip looked around, confused. He nodded solemnly. Then we'll have 4 pasties, 2 birra tiranas, and 3 diet colas, please. Alexander's face clouded. Ah, I am afraid we have no birra tiranas. I must drive to Albania in a big white van to fetch them myself. Saves on taxes, you know. I'm going tomorrow. I can set 2 aside for you. Chip sighed, visibly deflated. We're leaving tomorrow, so just the pasties and 4 diet colas then, thanks. Alexander smiled in that maddening way only a man with a thick moustache and a superiority complex honed behind a steamy takeaway counter could manage. Ah, but the colas, they are warm, he said proudly. They sit atop the food reheater. They were very cheap to buy, so I sell them at a premium. If they were cold, I would have to charge more. I save you money, my friend. How about that? Chip stared at him, blankly, wordlessly. He handed over the cash and accepted the warm bag of hot pasties and tepid colas like a man accepting his fate. Alison leaned in with a smirk. Prosody rates. Why is it always you, Chip? Never mind, Chip muttered. At least we've got something to eat. Pasty, drink, then we hit a pub. After that, back to the hotel. Sleep. Forget this disaster of a day. Lady Helen hesitated. Her aristocratic instinct told her to retreat. She wanted nothing more than to slink back to the hotel and draw a bath, not that there was one, but the others needed a drink, something strong to rinse the day from their mouths. They stumbled into a small, dimly lit pub around the corner. The air inside smelled of spilt ale and damp carpet. Pin, ever the gentleman, volunteered to fetch the first round. He returned moments later, setting the drinks down with a flourish as if he'd just retrieved the Holy Grail. "Right," he said, wiping his hands down his trousers. "1 gin and tonic and 1 beer for me. Chip, 1 gin and tonic and 1 beer for you." He turned to the ladies, expectant. Alison raised an eyebrow, then grabbed the gin and tonic intended for Chip and passed it to Lady Helen. She snatched the other for herself and took a swift, deliberate sip. "Actually," she said, coolly, "we'll have 1 double gin and tonic each." She turned to Chip, shaking her head as she downed another mouthful. "If you boys want a double gin and tonic, go to the bar yourselves." Chip narrowed his eyes at Pin, who merely shrugged. They both knew the rules had changed. Pin cleared his throat and changed the subject. "I've been thinking. We need to hide the Merc. Give it a few days, and the police will stop actively looking. Parking it near Bristol Airport should be fine." He leaned in slightly, voice low. "But let's not drive straight to Scotland. No point charging ahead. We could take a scenic route. Head to Birmingham tomorrow, stop off in the Cotswolds, and check out Stratford-upon-Avon. A bit of history. See where Shakespeare wrote his plays. We need a break." Lady Helen dabbed her eyes with a tissue, the emotions of the past few days finally catching up with her. "I'd like that," she said softly. "A slower pace would help me. I'm just emotional, you know?" Pin gave her a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "Don't worry, Helen. We've got this." She knocked back her gin and tonic in one go. Alison followed suit, equally eager to put the day behind her. Chip and Pin gulped down their beers. "Another round?" Chip asked, a bit too brightly. "No," Alison replied, a bit too firmly. "We need to be up early and get on the road. No time for more drinks."